Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's Thursday, November the 14th, 2024. We're a week or something into the Trump thing from last week and months to go before it all starts. This is Paul English Live. I'm with you for at least the next 2 hours here on WBN 324, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the UK. Welcome to the show. And on tonight's show, we're going to be looking at money. Lots of it, some of it on film and some of it in the studio. And I'm expecting to be joined by the usual crew. Patrick's already here, running around doing something in Wisconsin. Paul's lurking. And hopefully Eric will join us at some point shortly. Well, hi everyone and welcome. This is Paul English Live, show number 63. Gosh, how the time flies. It's a chilly evening here where I am on the south coast, or at least I'm chilly. The thermometer says it's not that cold, but I feel a little bit cold anyway, so there we go. I think there might even be a full moon tonight. It's crystal clear, so that's really rather dramatic and everything. But yeah, Paul English Live here for the next couple of hours. Before we get into all that, here on WBN, just to let you know, this show is for people aged 18 years of age and older. This is a sort of public health information message. Not that we're too fruity. Well, some people are, but we're pretty good with all that kind of stuff, and we mind our P's and Q's, particularly our P's. So you should be quite safe. But of course, if you're not over 18, you've got to go away and do something else. Apparently, something like that. But at least you've been given fair warning. So that's what we like to do. A busy sort of week here for me, house-wise. I always like to start with housing arrangements. I've just finished doing some flooring this week and repairing leaky things like windows that were leaking things. I've found this lovely sticky stuff that's like sticky lead flashing. Don't know if you know about this kind of stuff, but it's really great. And I've been repairing parts of my conservatory, which had decided to turn into not a conservatory. They're like holes in it and things like this. So I'm holding the whole thing together with like sticky back plastic. It seems to be doing quite well, actually. Might last a couple of years the amount of it I've put on. So that's been pretty cool. And for those of you interested in the updates on my car situation, I had quite a moment this week, actually, because I did mention that my car had blown up, and I'm trying to remember when I got the report back. Was it before last week's show? Maybe I've whittled on about this anyway. I got a report back with the sort of blow-by-blow account of the repair bill. My, how I laughed. And I looked at it and I went, no, the repair bill was twice the value of the car. Which was not particularly encouraging. If you've ever seen something like that, you'll know exactly what I mean. So I contacted the garage and I said the car obviously had to go to Car Heaven or Car Hell. I don't know where they go these days. The Knackers Yard, at least that was the term for old horses, the scrap yard. And somebody came and retrieved the car from me on Tuesday. And I received the princely sum of £180 scrap value for it, which just managed to pay the bill for having it towed there in the first place down to the garage and the inspection bill, which was about 105 quid. So I ended up with about £15 left over, which is enough to buy 3 pints of beer, wherever it's £5 a pint, and it probably isn't £5 a pint anymore anyway. The kicker to it, the other interesting thing in my day, I was obviously, covered in a ball of energy with all this kind of stuff, is that I borrowed my son's car to go out of the Tuesday evening. And as I'm pulling up to the pub, as you know, I sometimes go to the pub, only once a fortnight. It's quite sad, really. It used to be all the time, of course, when I was younger. Not really. But as I'm just reversing into the car parking space, that car died on me too. I sort of looked at it. All the electrics in the car they went to sleep. And I thought, oh, that's a bit queer. So I put the key in the ignition again, tried to start it up again, and no joy whatsoever. Absolutely dead. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go to the pub because it's only about 7 o'clock. So I did. There were good friends there with jump leads ready to help me out. But it turned out that later on, this was all like a false alarm. I went to the car and it obviously caught its breath and it started. So I know this is not much of a tale, but I was, it was like a record for me. I'd not broken 2 cars in one day ever. So it was kind of a new sort of low point or high point, something like that. At the same time, my phone went on the blink. So it was just lots of fun. I was just having a lot of fun with the physical universe on Tuesday. Fingers crossed and touch wood and all that. That seems to have passed. I haven't broken any more windows. Oh, no, I tell you what I did do. Yesterday, I set a pan on fire in the kitchen. And I set another one on fire about 6 weeks ago. And today I left, so I've become slightly absent-minded. I'm turning into one of those professor types that, I've got to go off and do this, and I'm going to end up burning the house down if I don't watch it. So that was a lot of fun, much to the consternation of some guests who we had in the house at the time. They said, is that a fire in your kitchen? I looked and went, oh, yeah, it is. So we got that put out. Anyway, that's been sort of the kerfuffle in my backyard for the last few days. I hope you've been having a more peaceable time of it and getting used to the fallout from last week's election. I really enjoyed last week's show with George Hobbs. And if you don't catch his show on a Thursdays, he's on earlier than me in the day, not on WBN, but he's on Radio Soapbox. He's also got his own Rumble channel, which is worth pitching into. He's on for an hour, 5 o'clock till 6 o'clock in the UK. That's midday till 1 p.m. US Eastern. Another really good show from him today. Lots of good sort of juicy things going on, and I believe that show's going to expand out to a couple of hours in a few weeks' time after Thanksgiving. In fact, he mentioned it when he was here last week. So that's been going on. Something else that happened in the interim was that I joined up with Eric von Essex and Dennis Wise on the Sunday over at Fockham Hall. Me and Dennis went over to Fockham Hall, to the stately mansions there, and did a show with Eric. And Eric, are you there? I can see you there. So welcome to the show.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Greetings.
And have you recovered?
Yes, and thank you for coming on the show last Sunday. We had an absolute enormous audience. But unfortunately, I must say this to everybody, I had trouble in shutting the show down. And what happened is I just could not, sort of end the show. So
is it still running?
Well, it was still running the next morning.
Right.
And now what I'm going to try and do is download it and then sort of cut off so many hours through the night that it was running. But what happens is Rumble Studio seems to have these little quirks which they got to sort out. Or it's me having little quirks that I got to sort out. But I could not turn the blank thing off. But it was a fantastic show. One of the best. And Dennis was real firing on all 4 cylinders, and so were you. I think I didn't want the show to end. I don't know how you feel.
Well, it didn't. It didn't.
Well, it didn't, did it?
No, it didn't. It's still running now. You liked it that much. You never turned it off.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great. No, fantastic. It was. We had a lot of fun. So if you didn't catch it, of course, hopefully, Eric, you will be able to recover the recording. You'll be able to catch it at some point once Eric's untangled his tapes or whatever's going on. But yeah, we were looking at Remembrance Sunday, but with a kind of twist, weren't we? And looking at all sorts of aspects of that. It was, I enjoyed myself immensely. Very relaxed show. Unlike this one where it's all frenetic and crazy. No. So it was pretty good.
Well, sorry to cut in there, Paul. Didn't mean to talk over you, but if anybody's got a recording of the show, I'd be most grateful because it would be come in handy. Yeah. So I don't know what happens.
Well, maybe there is somebody out there, some enterprising type did, although I guess like all of us, we just rely on systems working. They don't always work. I've got recordings here running on 2 or 3 channels, actually, to try and make sure I don't come up empty-handed, because we've had things that are really reliable, and you go there and you go, oh, for whatever reason, there's been a glitch somewhere out in the networks, and we didn't get a recording of it. But fingers crossed, that generally goes okay. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. If fun's the right word to describe such a thing. But it was really good. One of the things that I was covering there, I didn't want to sort of go right into this again tonight because I do want to sort of look at the monetary thing, although Remembrance Sunday connects through to the monetary thing because of the driving causes of the conflicts and all this and the other. This is my take on things, that all roads lead to the bank. Basically, it used to be Rome. It's the bank and has been the bank for an awful long time. But there was this wonderful letter. I ought to send you the link, actually. And a wonderful letter that Hermann Göring wrote to Winston Churchill a few days before he took his own life at Nuremberg during the trials. And it's actually a lot longer than all the bits that I read out, Eric, in the show. And I was just wondering whether there was any bits worth quoting here tonight. Right at the beginning, and sort of, I don't want to.
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, but what a letter! I mean, it really was that should. Well, it should be on the national curriculum. Children should read that. Although, no, that wouldn't. Sorry, that we can't tell truth, can we? Sorry, that's the problem.
Well, I'll tell you what. I just haven't had a chance since Sunday to do it. I've been so busy laying floors, having cars blow up on me, and doing all sorts of other incredibly hilarious things that I didn't expect to be doing. That I've not had a chance to do it. But I will record the whole thing. I think it's going to come out about 12 or 15 minutes. But I'm just trying to pick a bit here that's just worth quoting. If you're not familiar with it, okay, Hermann Göring, a few days before he took his own life at Nuremberg, wrote this letter to Winston Churchill. And it's quite a letter because although some of it is kind of inaccurate in the sense that he sees Stalin, getting his act together and coming to smash us all to bits, the essence of what he's talking about is absolutely true. Let me just read you this paragraph, and then I'll just want to read you this little bit. He says, in you, he's addressing Winston Churchill here, he says, in you, I identify before history the man who had the ability to bring Adolf Hitler down with his political accomplishments, the man who will, however, be unable to raise the shield protectively against the invasion of Europe by the Asiatics. It was your ambition to justify the Versailles Treaty regarding Germany. It will prove fatal to you that you succeeded. You personified the hardened obstinacy of your old gentry, and you also personified the stubbornness of its old age, opposing the last gigantic effort of the rejuvenated German power to decide the fate of Europe in the steppes of Asia in order to safeguard the same in the future. Long after my responsibility in the future development of events has found its objective judge, it will be put to your account that the past bloody war has not been the final one which had to be fought on the continent for the very possibility of the existence of its nations. And I think that this is absolutely spot on. Although he's describing the form of conflict in a slightly different way, as we are all aware, we are under an onslaught, not necessarily from Asiatics, although I guess that's part of it, but from the communist overthrow or infiltration, and I'm just going to use the word communist because it's still the best shorthand guide to it, or the Bolshevik infiltration of the power centers of the European nations, and America, of course, to adopt what is currently known as the woke agenda and all these other things, which are part of a sort of, Weimar Republic cultural decay, demoralization process to actually drive everybody in the West bug batty. So Göring really, I think, probably, and if you may have mentioned a few months ago, I was talking about David Irving's book, Nuremberg, The Final Battle. If you read the final few chapters, which are primarily concerned with Göring and his fate and his relationship with his wife, they are very moving, and Göring acquitted himself, I think, at the end of his life tremendously, considering that he wasn't always in favour with Mr. Hitler. He was slightly scathing about him, certainly if you read the Goebbels diaries and things like this. But it's an amazing letter. I'll record the lot, and we'll probably put it up and make it available. So, in fact, maybe I'll just stick a picture on it and stick it in the Rumble channel, because it's one of those sorts of little things that might, last quite a while. It's kind of timeless in many ways, and it's worth hearing it from the other side. So, all good stuff. Yeah. Now, where else are we? Who else is here? Who is lurking? Let's just bring everybody else in. Patrick.
Yeah.
Hey,
hi. How's it going? I just wanted to. I wanted to mention for the people listening, who is Hermann Göring? He was an important character, I'd assume, in World War II, eh?
He was. I like the way you're asking that question as if you don't know. This is really good. But yes, he was. He was pretty important. He was head of the Luftwaffe. He was, on the negative side, he was known to be, on barbiturates for most of his life. He ballooned to an enormous size during the conflict, World War II. He was often viewed as... Yeah?
Didn't he take over for Hindenburg as president of the Reichstag?
He might have done at some point.
I'm pretty sure it was from like 32 to 45. He was.
Yeah. I mean, militarily, I think in World War I, he was a very accomplished flyer. He was, which is why he rose also in the ranks. And there's something about him that he's got this kind of fat schoolboy charm. I think that's how he was referred to, but he's a lot more than that. And his steel at the end is considerable, worthy of any man. Let's put it that way. You want to know how a man behaves under the most terrible pressure and circumstances. Mr. Goering acquitted himself admirably. And I think I mentioned somewhere in Irving's book that the German prisoners of war, when they heard his final sort of radio broadcast from the Nuremberg courtroom, he kind of exonerated himself in their eyes and hearts, actually. Obviously, there'd been a bad PR campaign against him, possibly not without good reason. Because I know they were very frustrated by the inefficiencies at times of the Luftwaffe and all sorts of other things. They were very good as well in other regards, but there was certainly that going on politically. But yeah, he was a pretty important guy. Head of the Luftwaffe, a bit of a braggadocio at times, loved to dress up in massive costumes and things, had that going for him. And yet at the end, he came ridiculously good, I think. It's a very honourable acquittal and very brave. Really, to put cyanide in your mouth and kill yourself. Seriously, I don't care what you think about anybody. It is. This is not to say there wasn't bravery on the other side. There was, but Goering exemplified it as well.
He killed himself, or he was killed?
No, he killed himself.
He did.
He did, yes. It was the great outrage of the Nuremberg trials, because the whole idea was to make sure that none of them got access to cyanide capsules. To do that, and they checked him for weeks. He was in there for weeks, maybe months, actually, because the trial went right through to October of that year. And he managed to get one. And that was that. The report's amazing in the book. I won't try and go over it. If you read Nuremberg, the Final Battle, those last couple of chapters, you should read the whole thing, obviously. But as you get towards the end, this exemplifies him, and it's a good point as well. I know we keep coming back to this, but there's a reason for it. Is because the fate, the plight of that country, is very much the plight of all of us right now. I think to a great degree. I mean, I suppose in more recent times it's been the way that they wiped out South Africa and what they did to South Africa, and how they're seeking to roll the same plan out, and are unfortunately being quite effective with it here in mainland Europe and what's left of it. But again, I come back to the bank. I come back to the control of money. We come back to usury. And today's little subhead for the show is God or Mammon. And for those of you not familiar with it, Mammon is the name of the god of money. And I guess not that I've looked greatly into the mythology of Mammon or where he came from or anything like that, or she came from. I don't think it's a lady. I don't think it's Mrs. Mammon. But Mammon exemplifies the negative, everything that's negative and in opposition really to the laws of God. And I was going through a few things earlier this week, and people often say to me, actually they don't often say to me anything much like this, because nobody really asks too many questions about this kind of stuff. But we talk about the effects. What would be the positive effects of living without usury? What could they possibly be? I mean, would it be better? That kind of stuff.
You mean like getting a bank loan? Yeah. Mortgage without interest?
I do. But I think in the wider picture, Patrick, what I'm thinking, if we look in the past, there's a book written by a guy called Thorgood, professor at Oxford or Cambridge in the 1900s. I've forgotten the name of it right now. It doesn't really matter. It's about commercial operations in Middle England, 1496 to 1500 and odd, something like that. And there's a lot of salient facts in it, but here's just one. Here's one. Remember, this is before the arrival of the Bank of England, which arrived in 1694. And the dynamic here is repeated in America and everywhere where central banking usury scams arise, which is this. A man in England in the early 1500s could work and feed himself. And from his work, he could also feed his wife, and he could feed his children as well, and maintain his rent or whatever he was doing to keep a roof above his head in peaceful and peaceable circumstances. He could do that quite easily. The really interesting fact about this, you go, so what, is this. He worked 14 weeks a year. Not 40, 14. That's 84 days. Sorry. 4 days. No, it's not that, is it? It's whatever it is. 14 weeks times 7. 77, 98 days. 98 days he would work. 14 weeks a year. Now, that the equivalent to that in modern times would be that you would be working Mondays and Tuesdays, 2 days a week, and that's it. Monday and Tuesday. You'd just work Monday and Tuesday if we were still running under similar lines. And I think the other thing worth adding in is we're talking about people at the time that were faced with considerable laborious work. Everything was basically, the vast majority of the people at the time were working on the land, because if you didn't eat, and we know this with the farmers, of course, they're having a go at them right now, as you all well know. If you didn't eat, you're not going to be doing too much work for very long. So I would like to suggest to you that we could, if we can drive it back in that direction, you're going to have a lot more time on your hands. Of course, we all know that those in charge of things, that's not what they kind of want. Yet all their power has been derived, I would suggest, from being the first at the fiscal trough, courtesy of the usury system. And I just wondered, Patrick or Eric, what you might have to say about something like that. Eric, do you quite like the idea of just working 2 days a week?
I think he's mute.
He's mute.
He's trying to consider it, and it'd be like.
He came off the stage. Sorry, Eric, you came off the stage for some reason. There we go. You're back. Hi, welcome back to the show, Eric. Did you hear what I had to say? Anyway, or didn't you hear that?
Hello.
I was asking
about would it be okay to work for 2 days? Fine.
You're all right with that? Yeah.
Sorry. I'm okay. Is it okay to work for 2 days? Yes, I'm very happy working 2 days. Because you think, to me, usury is theft. That's all it really is. And that's the reason we've got government. Because government's job is to rob you blind whilst making out they're giving you a few little, bit of offal for the usury scammers. Because they are working for the usury scam. So really, when you look at it, all we're paying these very high taxes for is to feed the ever-inflating usury scam. And that's it. And it's true what Henry Ford said. If people knew the truth about the banking industry, there'd be a revolution before tomorrow morning. You're spot on. We're kept in ignorance. That's the government job.
Well, hopefully we're part of the ignorance defrayment industry here to try and remove that. We're not alone in talking about these things, but I often feel, well, I'm going on about it too much. But then I look around and I think, well, people aren't going on about it enough. My take on it is that until this primary problem is resolved in our favour, i.e. back to honourable payments. The Bible talks about honest weights and measures. That's really what it's talking about. In essence, that leads through to what you would call fair trading. If you think about it, the idea of people taking rampant, very high levels of profit by being middlemen is anathema to us. It doesn't sit right. There's something in it that it's not by the sweat of a man's brow, it's by the manipulation of markets, the gaining of monopolies, and therefore the suppressing of markets and the control of them, and by extension, the control of our lives. And of course, we are burdened with this. Actually, they've all been like this my entire life, but the current political crew, they're just a different type of revulsion compared to the previous ones. They don't understand. They don't understand this, and they don't see that it really would be their greatest opportunity. And the only conclusion we can really make is that they're already bought and paid for, and that therefore, I know I'm stating what you would often call, say, the bleeding obvious, but they're bought and paid for, and working for those people that are effectively the elite usury cartel, because it's usury that is at the heart of this transfer of wealth in ever-increasing amounts from the pockets of the workers, that's you and me, everyone, and the middle classes, into the hands of the controllers of the system. And without that mechanism, the transfer of that wealth would not be possible at the scale that it is. They would still find other things for a while, but this would be the foundational plank totally removed, I feel, from their control grid. And I mentioned George earlier. He was just talking about the policies he would like to hear, about what's going to come from the new incoming, your great leader, Patrick, that you're about to be burdened with. And I haven't heard him talking about shutting down the Fed or closing down the IRS yet. And
I did hear something about the Fed chief saying he would not quit if Trump tried to fire him. He'd have no ability to fire him.
Powell, is that? Is that Powell?
Powell. Yeah, Powell.
Okay, yeah. I've got the clip somewhere, but we've said it now. And it'll take me so long to find the clip. But what's his first name? Jerome? I can't remember his first name. What is
Jerome.
Jerome. Look, my brain's working. This is amazing. Jerome Powell. So he's the question was at a press conference earlier this week, I think, if Mr. Trump asked you to step down, will you step down? He went, no. What, you really won't step down? No, I won't. How about that? Well, what does that tell you? Does it say that Mr. Trump is in charge of managing your nation, Patrick? What do you think?
Nope.
Not really. I mean, it's not so much. I guess he's the chief law enforcer, so to speak, and the Congress really is in charge of any legislation. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think he has much power at all, other than his media presence. And well, I mean, obviously whatever is allotted to him for decisions of like who goes into what diplomatic, group, and things like the Secretary of State seem to have a lot of sway in things like sanctioning entire countries. So he does have power, but really he's limited because of what he owes to the people who put him into power, which are namely the bankers.
Mm-hmm.
But let's face it, Patrick, if you or I or any of us started a political party which began to get very, very big, that the first policy was to eradicate usury, I think the leader of that party would be forced to take an afternoon out with the Undertaker, or would be destroyed. And this happened before.
Well,
there was a
it's going to have to take somebody who doesn't,
and it was destroyed.
Well, it's going to have to take somebody with the level of martyr's attitude. So yeah, but people exist like that. So
I agree.
I think there's hope. I don't, but then again, it's this world is full of suffering, and
well, this happened with Nick Nixon. That's right.
You're going to have. Somebody's going to have to do
Sorry,
it. Someone's
Patrick,
going to have to grab the bull by the horns. That's okay. That's okay, Eric. I think we're having a little bit of technical problems, but I hear you. Yes, we need it. We need a state banking and anti-usury party, like Stephen Mitford Goodson was talking about in South Africa.
Should we form one?
Well, he already formed one. We just take up the reins.
Who? Mitford Goodson did?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and what happened to him again? Remind me.
Yeah, same thing that Eric just described.
Yeah, so 2018, wasn't it? Something like that?
Yeah, I remember him talking to Andy about that, Andy Hitchcock. Yeah, and it wasn't that long after that he was on his deathbed.
Yes. You don't think it's because he talked to Andy, do you? No.
Yeah, you never know. These London.
Andy,
types,
what are you doing to people? No, I'm making light of what is a very serious problem.
It is.
It's a massively serious problem because it's not the first time that this has happened. So maybe this is an indication of why the political representatives that we think we're aware of are either stupid about this, which I think is generally the rule for most of them, or are just very guarded because they know that hidden power, as it were, that's going to come against them, the one that will savagely do anything it can because it can get away with so much because it's able to pay off everybody up and down the corruption line.
Institutional power. It's got power, and that's what we have, but we don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
there is an institution there, and it's able to counteract it, but it's not being people just aren't aware of it.
Yep. No, they're not. Well, I was thinking about that.
But we do.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I was thinking, God versus mammon, or God or mammon, and generally the world has been subsumed, whether they like it or not, into being part of the mammon congregation, for want of a fouler phrase. We're compelled by all the finagling and the extension of the power that they gained once they got control of the bank. Once they've got control of the bank, the next step is the courts. The courts then rule in their favor, and the courts go with it because the bankers are able to pay off the legal fraternity. They're able to create a legal fraternity as well that receives ever higher fees, taking it out of the pockets of the peasants. We can't afford to defend ourselves, courtesy of the legal costs that are involved, which are, of course, astronomical and insane with these things. It's just a bloke talking who's learnt some stuff. But, if he's a barrister, he's £2,000 an hour. If he's a silk, he's £5,000 an hour, or whatever it is. I don't know what ludicrous sums they charge these days. But, of course, they're able to get away with it because people often are in situations where their lives or their livelihood for a long time is on the line, and they would obviously and understandably prefer not to lose it. So bank first, the law second, they pervert that, and then they hold the whole thing together by buying up the media to tell you the tale that the bank and the law are all honest. And it's such a powerful array of communications weaponry directed at us that it's no wonder people have this uninquiring, non-inquisitive view about it. And yet, when you just take a cursory glance at all these characters, like Stephen Mitford Goodson, there are plenty of them. And also, I would suggest, I've mentioned it before, it's not a genius comment, but it's just by way of reminder, I think it's a primary component in why the conflict with Germany, particularly World War II, was on the scale that it was, because their method, effectively, of restoring and rejuvenating their economy, I'm using the word rejuvenate because Goring used it, so I think I can use it too, is a major threat to the continuance of the usury business. It's such a major. It just is, isn't it? It's a major thing. And my personal experience when I was in court 20 odd years ago, and I was green as grass, really. I had some inkling of what was going on, but the detailed knowledge wasn't with me at that time. I was just sort of in the moment. But the way that they reacted to what we were doing, okay, so we'd set up a bank. Okay, so we were printing our own checks. Okay, and things like that. All quite naive. Seriously, it was fantastic fun. It was brilliant because people just go, oh, yeah, come on, we'll get on and make this work. Left uninterfered with, we can sort all this stuff out. But, of course, you have to wade through an absolute mass of overcomplicated verbal and written mumbo-jumbo, courtesy of the economics community, always delivered in very heavy, dramatic tones. If we don't do this, the economy's going down the toilet. And people buy into it. They buy into it because the only bits of information they've got do not include an understanding of how banks create money out of thin air at interest. Although many people are now aware of that than at any other time, this is a really good sign. But the knock-on effects of that, which are immense, it's like I've often felt like we're living in a kind of fog. You can't even see it, and you are compelled to find money to pay those bills next month. But it runs completely counter to the abundance that the Creator has made available to us down here for the duration of our lives. It's considerable, the abundance, like it was to those guys 500 years ago working 2 days a week. And of course, because of that, and we've talked about architecture and beautiful buildings, a lot of beautiful buildings went up then, okay, in the form of churches and abbeys and the like. But that's because these guys taught themselves skills with regards to stonemasonry and carving and woodwork and all these other things, stained glass windows, all of that kind of stuff was them having fun, I guess, doing what they really wanted to do and bringing beauty into the world. And they did an awful lot of that. Buildings which apparently we are hard-pressed to replicate this day. This is from a bunch of guys that weren't paying interest and were only working Mondays and Tuesdays.
Right, because of the available labor.
Yeah.
And you're right about that analogy of us being in the fog, and it's kind of like we have to proceed that way too, because it's if you start running through the fog, you never know what you're going to hit, so you have to be cautious. You can't. So yeah, of course you can't just all of a sudden go out there and say anti-usury, this here, let's do this, and it's like, well, we're going to have to find allies in the legal system, in the banking, in all of these places where there's corruption. You're going to have to find people who know better and are kind of like they have their hands tied and be able to do something about it eventually with strength in numbers and making awareness and building communication between them, because that's the only way it's going to happen. And you need people, advocates in courts, standing up for poor people who can't afford to pay the usury, and defending them against the bullies that are doing this to them, that are more or less subjugating them unlawfully and just through malice. Even it's just.
I'm trying to think in England.
Think about.
Yeah, in England or even Scotland, Eric, are you aware of when would the last political movement be, or are there any that we can easily recall that would be addressing this issue as the primary core policy that they wanted to implement?
Yes. Yes, it was the BNP, and the leader. Yes, there's the British National Party, and they had at the top of their manifesto it was the abolition of usury. And the leader of that party, I heard him on the YouTube not YouTube, sorry, it was another one, but I can't remember what platform, but he was speaking, and he said he got a knock on the door one day by the Secret Service who said, drop the abolition of usury or we will destroy you and your party. The rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
He was destroyed and his party was destroyed. Who's heard of the BNP today? And that's the truth.
Don't, Paul, haven't you talked to the dude that was high up in that BNP?
Oh, Nick Griffin.
Yeah.
I've had one conversation with Nick, and Nick has had, so he's just somebody I've had a conversation with. And I'm glad you added all that in, Eric, because certainly things like Oswald Mosley's lot, the British fascist movement, and all these things, which of course are now absolutely anathema. These are extreme, right-wing, detestable, Nazi things. You see all the paintbrushes come out. You get completely lathered with every sort of vindictive
especially
adjective.
in England. Because the Brits, the English were there in the thick of it back in the day in the 1800s, supplying ammunition to these people that are the problem now. The liberals, the national liberals of Europe back post French Revolution, Germany and Austria and all these other places.
It's a trail that has been long lit. It's a long fuse on this trail. This is why I've mentioned some of these historical events here and the books that I read about those things, which I would urge if you get a sort of sense of curiosity about them, although they take a little while, at least you get to sort of go into a slightly meditative state whilst you're reading. Reading is a very good thing, reading sort of long form books. Not all the time. You can go a bit sort of funny if you do that all the time as well, get a bit too bookish, but it should be a good sort of healthy part of your information digestion system, I feel, because you consume long form books in a slightly different way. It gives you more room for thought. You can apply your own thinking to it, and that's really important. We've mentioned the so-called English Civil War, which was in the 1650s and 60s, and it all closed out 1666. Cromwell's going to be the new messiah for the people who call themselves Jews, and that's 1666. And then less than 30 years later, we're burdened with the Bank of England, which the English didn't own. We didn't own it.
Right. Well, and this is the thing, Paul, because then anybody that has control of that power can then say, well, okay, here's the threat to our riches, our wealth, and our fortune, and we're just going to refer to them as Amalek from the Bible, where it's our enemy, and it's God's enemy too, so let's go after them. And you can just say, oh, they're Amalek, let's go after them and beat them up. And that's what goes on. It's been going on, still goes on. Just like
and yet it's a complete inversion. It's a complete inversion of biblical law. Usury is I mean, the Bible doesn't. I don't think the word usury is necessarily in the Bible.
Charging interest on loans. That's what usury is.
Yeah, it is
charging
the charge
interest where you're not. There's not an equal exchange of labor going on there. You're not owed anything if you borrow money to somebody because you're borrowing from your excess, and to expect them to pay more than what you borrowed them is unjust.
It is unjust. And it's not loving your fellow man. The usurer, by definition, is actually involved in an activity that is hateful, I would suggest. Just a thought. It's hateful. If you see, when families operate and lend money to one another inside the family, or they don't say, "Oh, here's £100 and you owe me 110." No, but I don't think they do. Maybe there are certain families that do that.
Well, I'm sure the bankers that are involved in usury do that with their children to get them involved in usury.
Get them trained up, are you saying, Patrick?
Yeah. No, seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I bet you're right. Yeah.
Will borrow money from their children at, and then tell them, "Oh, I'm going to pay you back, 20, 50%, whatever it is, but 6%, whatever." And then they get used to it. And, "Oh, yeah, Daddy's rich. He's giving me, look at all the money I'm making off of the money I loaned him. And I'll go do that to some poor person on the street when I grow up."
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
But if you read John Hamer's book, Behind the Curtain, he actually goes into it and explains that, I think it was Edward I Longshanks, he abolished usury. And for give or take around about 300 years before Cromwell came along, this country was one of the richest countries in the world because we used tally sticks. And that kept a note of all different transactions and that. It's very strange that where the tally sticks were kept, the building burned down. Well, slap my thigh, what a surprise. But really, Cromwell is looked on as this great hero, but he ensured that future generations would be tied up in an ever-inflating debt for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Einstein, who I have got no time for whatsoever, but one thing he did say that was true, is that compound interest...
It's like the eighth wonder of the world or something.
It's the one that can get away with it.
That's right, he did.
Yeah, and it is really the eighth wonder of the world. It's the wonder they can get away with it. And
well, it's because so many people benefit from it. The people on the pals of the usurers side, who are now all in politics, this is why there are no champions in the political core. There aren't any. They
wouldn't need government.
There's warmongers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but as we're finding out with this new Trump cabinet.
Because people say, "Oh, you need a leader. You need," but you see, when you look at it, the country is run literally bullied by the usury scammers, and the country's actually run by the civil servants. So really, what we really need is a fully accountable, minimal civil service. Mm-hmm. Because it's true what Ronald Reagan said. If government took a holiday for a couple of months, nobody would notice any difference. And it's true. Because their job is basically to give you the feeling that with this idea of democracy, that you've got freedom of choice when you haven't. Because they all have to be usury friendly. They all have to go along with the scam. But keep it a dark secret away from the electorate.
Yes. Are you ready for a little bit of a historical thing here? I've got a little historical thing to tell you. This is from the late 1500s. Now the language is a little bit, well, it's the language of the time. Okay, this is written by a vicar at the time. I'm going to call him a vicar. He might have been more than that. Called Henry Smith, who I think was probably part of the Puritan movement in London. It's called An Examination of Usury. I'm not going to read the whole thing out because it's in two parts. This is quite a long little paragraph, but I like this, and I just want to... It's by way of showing you that this issue has always been near to people who see what the prime problem is. And this is what he wrote. He says, now all the... and this is to do with the title here, God or Mammon. It is important because the biblical laws on honest weights and measures and not abusing widows and not taking advantages of orphans are all addressed ultimately to the practice of usury, because it's a way of preying on your fellow man, and that's not on. So he writes this, he says, "Now all the commandments of God are fulfilled by love, which Christ noteth, when he draweth all the commandments to one commandment, which is, love God above all things, and thy neighbour as thyself. As if he should say, he which loveth God will keep all the commandments which respect God. And he which loveth his neighbour will respect all the commandments which respect his neighbour. Therefore, to maintain love, God forbiddeth all things which hinder this love, and amongst the rest, he forbiddeth usury as one of her deadliest enemies." Her, I guess, referring to love. "For a man cannot love and be an usurer, because usury is a kind of cruelty, and a kind of extortion, and a kind of persecution, and therefore the want of love doth make usurers. For if there were love, there would be no usury, no deceit, no extortion, no slandering, no revenging, no oppression. But we should live in peace and joy and contentment, like the angels." Well, I quite like the idea of that. And he goes on, he says, "Whereby you see that all our sins are against ourselves. For if there were no deceit, we should not be deceived. If there were no slander, then we should not be slandered. If there were no envy, then we should not be envied. If there were no extortion, then we should not be injured. If there were no usury, then we should not be oppressed. Therefore God's law had been better for us than our own law, the law of men or the law of God. For if his law did stand, then we should not be deceived, nor slandered, nor envied, nor injured, nor oppressed. God hath commanded every man to lend freely. And who would not borrow freely? ? Therefore, they which brought in usury brought in a law against themselves." I rather like that. I hope that was clear. I know it's the language of the time, but I think it's spot on in terms of the root of all of this.
But you go up to anybody in the street and ask them, say usury, they wouldn't have a clue what you're talking about. And this is the frightening thing. I've said this to my neighbours about usury, and they don't know what it is. Usury, they really don't understand what is actually going on. And the governments, successive governments, have done a brilliant job of keeping everybody in the dark. They really have. They really are first class at it. It's a total pack of lies. I mean, I don't vote, no, but I mean, I think that I'm hoping that if enough people wake up, something will happen. But how we're going to change this, I don't know. Any ideas?
Well, we've got a bit of time left. We might discover it in the next hour and a bit.
Yes, that's it.
I think Calvin is worth mentioning here because this... Yeah.
Well, the trouble is, you see, they can't allow people to know about usury because their whole criminal game that they're playing will be overthrown. That's it. Because even these so-called truthful movements and things like that, they don't understand what usury is. You go up to these famous people in truth movements, they don't talk about usury. Why not? Very few. This is something that gets me because the root of the problem is finance. You're quite right, Paul. We've got to sort that finance out. And how can we do it when we're getting, was it 40, 50% tax? I think was it 45% tax in this country? I'm not quite sure, but I know it's a very high amount. It's being stolen from us to pay a bunch of cronies who dictate to us. Why?
Because that's the only way they can make it. I think it's because they harness it's like this circle of power, isn't it? Right in the epicenter, you've got these families that are lending to one another, as Patrick suggested. He's probably right, You've got these seasoned, long-standing families who've been controlling banks for hundreds of years, and they have found a way. It's been a gradual, incremental rot that's come in, and because they've got the levers of power and can control things they don't sit around going, "Ooh, we'd like to do that project, but can we afford it?" There's none of that. Their choices are, what are the most effective projects we want to do? We can do anything. We've already gotten by the short and curlies. They become all sort of highfalutin about this, that, and the other, and they do view themselves as replacing God. This is what Masonry is all about, that man is the measure of all things, and this is why it's in opposition to being dutiful to the actual laws, which will bring about kindness and chivalry and honour and decency and fair living. And these sound awfully quaint, don't they, in the modern environment? I'm fully aware that it sounds like that as I'm saying these things. But I believe that everybody has got a yearning in their heart to have it that way. I think people should be working 2 days a week. And the rest they could learn to maybe paint. I don't mean modern art.
Can you post that thing you just read from the 1500s? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'll send you the whole document. I've been looking it up today. It's vast. It's his entire sermons. I had to go through it, and get this one, and found it. And I haven't even read the whole thing, but I just hit that paragraph early on. I thought, I like that. I like the way he's thinking. I like the whole essence of it. I mean, because what's occurred is people forget about about the happiness that's supposed to be available in life. It's actually designed for us to thrive, to prosper, to be good with one another. And you can hear it when these old people had it 500 years ago, and we don't. Not to the degree that they did.
Like Eric was saying, it's such a depressing topic that nobody wants to talk about it. Because when you start thinking about the effects of it, it's like, I can't handle this.
Yes, it's bloody boring, isn't it? It's bloody boring.
It is. And I think there's a reason Dante put usurers in hell with a rope around their neck and a bag of money that they have to count.
Yeah.
Day in and day out.
Yeah, get on with that. See how that's going to, it's part of that Midas thing. I need more stuff. Why? Because if you're in that position, you think that your happiness lies in the acquisition of more stuff. And it clearly does not. It clearly does not, because most of these families that have all this, they're full of dysfunctional, paranoid, schizophrenic, sociopathic, psychopathic individuals. They seem to breed them. Warmongers.
They're warmongering because they're always collecting, and they're the collection agency, the repo man, having to go get their stuff and by any means possible with weapons.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I think even charities are an aspect of this. I don't like charities. I don't like them. I hate them. There's something, you just have this visceral, what are you doing? If I want to be charitable, and I am at times when I've got a five, I see guys sleeping here every now and again in a doorway. So if I've got a fiver in my pocket, they have it. I don't go mad because I know it's probably going on beer, but I don't blame them either. I'm not here to sort of judge their entire life. I'll do that. That's how it's to be done. Charity must be on your own doorstep with the people that you live with, and to breed that kind of behavior again. And of course, we see all these things that have been broken down, don't we? Like people don't know their neighbours anymore. And you used to be able to, I know it's all corny to say this in a cliche, but it's true. People used to leave their houses and doors open when they went out because they trusted their neighbours. Literally.
Oh, yeah, and churches were unlocked, and if you were a hobo, you could just walk into the church and find a place to rest on a pew. You could just, as a pilgrim, even back in the medieval days. I think people were a lot more hospitable, and there was less worry about criminality.
But the big problem is the finance industry attracts psychopaths, which is my pet subject, like bees around a honeypot, and psychopaths always set up an atmosphere of distrust amongst people. I've worked in offices where a psycho type person will come in and immediately everybody's suspicious of everybody else. That's how they survive. Look at the government, suspicious of everybody. That's their mindset, suspicion.
Well, that's the essence of psychological warfare, is you take two subjugated groups and prevent them from communicating with each other.
Yeah, that's it. But, I mean, this is probably the same in the States. From time to time, you get these people with this brilliant idea of starting their own currency. I mean, I do it for a laugh, fuck 'em all, fuck bobs, but that's for a laugh. But the real fact of the matter is, I mean, I've had people on my show talking about, we can start a new currency. And a question I've got is always, will the Rothschilds and the big banking families sit back and allow this to happen if it gets big? The answer is no.
No.
They'll destroy it.
No. Well, I beg the question. I beg the question whether the church had something going there with the indulgences, because obviously they it affected a reaction that to the point where now we don't even talk about those things.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned a few minutes ago about Calvin.
Right.
Probably his real name Cohen, as in Cauin, a French spelling of what is is highly likely that he was of Jewish descent. He said that a little bit of interest is okay. No. That was how it began. No. That was part of that breaking of the dam. Because when it comes from inside churches, which are supposed to be guardians of the laws of God, they're supposed to be that. We know that they're not that at all, courtesy of, what's his name, Welby, just taking a running jump and all this. They're just a joke. The whole thing is and it's all been rotted out by the kind of, they've become corrupt through greed. I mean, someone was telling me the other day that, there's the Miliband brothers. Unfortunately, Eric, you do know who I mean when I say the Miliband brothers, don't you?
Oh, yes, I know who you mean, yes.
And there's
American,
one chump... Well, they're English, or British, or whatever they want to call themselves. But one of them's over here in the government talking... Yeah, they're Marxist. Well, their father was a complete Belgian Marxist or something, which is about, I don't even know what to say about that. But one of them's in charge of environmental matters, and of course he's just talking complete blather about propellers and all this other crap. Complete goofy moron. And his other brother, who I always thought was the more vicious one, David Miliband, he heads up a charity in the States. I was told the other day, I haven't got any articles on this, if anybody's seen this, that the Church of England salted vast sums of money with this US charity. So David Miliband is over in the US heading up some kind of a charity, mate. It's all for charity, right? And we were just talking about charities earlier, weren't we? Because, that's just another misdirection. Oh, we're doing good. Miliband's salary last year was over $1 million. Not bad. Not bad for being charitable. That smells of an abomination of a type of usurious situation. Someone's absorbing vast quantities of cash for doing what exactly? Oh, yeah, I'm professionally kind. If you give it to the professionals, we can be really kind all the time, 24/7. Whereas you people, this is that whole mentality that we're not allowed to actually live and breathe and operate in the way that God has designed us to do it under his laws because they know better. And Calvin is part of that process. This rotting out of the whole thing.
The elect. Yeah. That was his thing, is creating this idea of the Christian elect that basically are saved, and then you're born into that, and you have no possibility of getting into it if you weren't born into it. So you could be treated as by these buggers. You could be buggered by them. And it's just a justification. That's the whole... You're talking about the Puritans. That was kind of a thing back in the day. You ever heard of the Cathars?
Yes.
Okay, now I just want to make this little mention because I did a little recently, was digging up some info on the Cathars. That name translates into Puritan from Greek, and I think the Cathars became the Puritans later on in history after that period of time. Is kind of a dualistic type they called it the Manichaean Albigensian heresy, where it's like there's a good God and then there's the evil God, and then they're both equal to each other type of deal. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that because that kind of stuck out to me. You're mentioning Puritans and Calvin.
You find good and bad in all these sorts of different flavors and branches. But what you were just explaining there, running through, Calvin's proposition, is part of this unnecessary intellectualization of what is really straightforward. It doesn't. In other words, the smart asses need to be involved in a kind of augmentation process. They create these institutions where they can be smart asses in them to justify drawing a wage down or whatever from the congregation, all this kind of stuff. And we don't even need them.
It's like calling people animals when they're men.
Yes.
And treating some people as animals and others as men.
Yep.
You can't do that. That's not the way God made us.
No.
And it boils down to the whole usury thing and all that sort of thing, and going away from God's law reminds me of the story of Moses coming down from Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments and seeing everyone else down worshiping a golden calf.
Yep.
He gets so frustrated he smashes the tablets, but it doesn't destroy the law. There's still the law that you have to obey. And like I said before, it's going to take somebody defending these weak people who can't defend themselves legally against the usurers and the bullies, because that's what they are. They're bullies, they're buggerers, and that's the problem. We need more men that are unafraid to speak up for the people being bullied, because it's in our society, we're run by these creeps that think they can bully the weaker people.
Spot on.
And there are
Absolutely.
too many stupid people, and unfortunately we have to live with that, but that's no excuse to bully them.
Yeah, it isn't. Anyway, look, we're at the end of the first hour. We're gonna take a rock and roll break now, because I'm just in the mood for doing something like that. You're listening to Paul English Live here on WBN 324. We're also going out on other assorted interesting networks, and we're also on Rumble. If you head over to Rumble, you'll find the link to that at paulenglishlive.com. You can pitch in with a lot of comments, which we've paid no attention to. I've been scanning them every now and again. I'm sorry, but quick shout out to everybody in the Rumble chat. Great to see you. Nice, lively conversations as always there. It's fantastic. Here's Jimmy Vaughan.
At you, just as fast, I felt brand new. Oh, you, I look at you. If I made a pass at you, or would you say that we were through? Oh, you, I look at you. Oh, treat yourself right, come with me, say I do. It takes all night, even if it takes all day. Oh, do you? Oh, look at you. Oh, treat yourself right. Come with me, say I do. Oh, boom, bop, boom. Oh, boom, bop, boom. Oh, boom, bop, boom. It takes all night, even if it takes all day. Oh, you, oh, look at you. Oh, treat yourself right. Come with me, say I do. Singing. Oh, boom, bop, boom. Oh, boom, bop, boom. Oh, boom, bop, boom. Oh,
Attention all listeners. Are you seeking uninterrupted access to WBN 324 Talk Radio despite incoming censorship hurdles? Well, it's a breeze. Just grab and download Opera Browser, then type in WBN324.zil. And stay tuned for unfiltered discussions around the clock. That's WBN324.zil.
The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing on the World Broadcasting Network are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of its owners, partners, and other hosts or this network. Thank you for listening to WBN 324 Talk Radio.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. And welcome back to Hour 2. Paul English Live here every Thursday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. in the US, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the UK. It's just gone 9:05 here in jolly old Blighty, and we're all very, very excited about that. And we're here having a wonderful chat. A much needed chat, needed a lot of times, about usury, about the true principles of banking and why it's the number one target on the list of things to be overthrown. In fact, what we have to do to go back to the Bible stuff is we have to, and then I guess this is where this phrase comes from. I've mentioned before that Christ's first public act was to get a whip and to whip money changers. Never, ever forget that. It's very important. And he turned the tables over. And I'm sure, obviously, that is where the phrase to turn the tables on the opposition comes from. And I'm ready to turn a few tables. If you could just point me to where they are and make sure that I don't get beat up in the process. And that's a big ask. Anyway, I'm here with Eric and Eric von Essex and with Patrick. Welcome back to part 2, gents.
Thank you.
Greetings.
Yeah, good to be back.
Yeah, the song we were listening to there in the middle was by Jimmy Vaughan. A very intelligent lyrics called Boom Bapper Boom. Sometimes I like to put things on that have got literally no lyrical meaning whatsoever, and that's one of them. He's the brother of Stevie Ray Vaughan, who is no longer with us. And one of my favourite guitarists, Jimmy Vaughan. I've seen him live maybe half a dozen times. Fabulous guitar player. Yeah, really great guy. Really fantastic.
Ray died here in Wisconsin.
Did he?
In a helicopter accident.
Wow.
Yeah.
I knew it was. I didn't know he was there. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around here.
Well,
I don't know I don't remember the details exactly. I just know it was a helicopter crash.
Well, yeah, I guess for listeners who are not necessarily into guitar players, it won't mean much, but Jimmy Vaughan was the guitarist with the fabulous Thunderbirds from mid-70s, and then they kind of got some albums out, as they used to be called then, 1979, and he was with them for about 10 years, did some brilliant work there, and has been sort of on a solo career and had a few other things as well. Did a great album with his brother, I've forgotten the name of it, produced by Nile Rodgers, I think. Some fabulous stuff on that.
His biggest hit single was Tough Enough with the Thunderbirds. So if you want to listen to this.
Yeah, I've got that. It's a cracking song, that. Yeah, that became a big one at baseball grounds, I remember, because I remember over in the States, they kept playing it all the time. Produced by Dave Edmunds, Britain's own Dave Edmunds. He brought him into the studio over here. I think it was Dave Edmunds and Nick Lowe, and they gave him a different sound for that album, and it's a fabulous album. But then they are fabulous, because it says so in the name of them. And we used to say, oh, you really are fabulous. And they said, yeah, we are, actually. So we found them fabulous at the time. They're still going, actually. Kim Wilson is still playing. I mean, I don't know how old he is now, but probably older than me. But they were playing a gig here, I think, about 3 or 4 months ago, somewhere in the summer, over here in the UK. So totally different lineup now, and I haven't seen them in years. But fond memories of them in my youth. That was the sort of stuff I was listening to. I wasn't going to discos. I was going to pubs and listening to bands playing things like that, and had a great time. So hopefully those days might return, whatever. You ever heard of that before, Eric, or is it not up your street, that kind of stuff? Oh, he's gone again.
I like some, but I've never heard of that one before. No, I'm still here. Hello, you still here? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're still here. We're still here, absolutely. So today's show
that's
image.
Good. That's good. Yeah, it's I like all kinds of music.
Do you? Country and western.
But I happen to like a little bit of country and western, but
yeah, some of it's good.
I'm a bit of a classical freak, but not too heavy. But also like big band from the 1940s. That's great. 1940s sounds. It's very sort of homely and warm, and just makes you feel good. That's it. And that's what it's designed
music
to do.
You can dance to.
Yeah.
But
It is. We've
I
been
think
listening to a lot of Tchaikovsky
That's right.
recently.
Well,
We have a lot of
dance,
Tchaikovsky on in the house. The Nutcracker Suite. Absolutely delightful music. It really is. It's just so Christmassy. It's just got all these sort of signature little themes and arrangements in it. You can hear so much movie music. And the other thing I've been listening to classically, the first bit of classical music that was ever played to me at school when I was about 10 or 11, maybe everybody got this one, was The Planet Suite by Gustav Holst, which is just fantastic. I think there's so much movie music owes a debt to that album, like all these sorts of themes in it. So I loved that. I loved it. And in fact, I'd love to go and see it played live. I've not been to see a classical orchestra for a long, long time, maybe 12 or 15 years. Not that I used to go regularly, but I would love to go and get the full works. Maybe we could do that and have a dignified evening somewhere, Eric, and we could, drink whiskey like gentlemen and stuff, and go and listen to something mighty like that. I'd be right on for that.
Wagner is my favourite instrumental. I'm a Wagner enthusiast. I think he was a genius, but you don't hear. You notice Classic FM, which I only listen to in the car, in between the adverts for charities. They very rarely play Wagner. I've noticed. Isn't that strange? I don't know why. I mean, but there's something about his music that I just love.
So have you seen the image for today's show that I've slung up? Have you seen it?
Yes, it's A Wonderful World. That is with Stewart, isn't it?
That's right.
What's his name? Jimmy Stewart, the actor.
Yeah, it's A Wonderful Life. Frank Capra, 1946. And I managed to find online some colorized versions of it. Not the whole film, although I think there is a colorized version of it. And I won't mind watching it. I mean, I'm quite happy watching the black and white one. And I think it's one of the greatest films ever made. At least that's how I feel every time I see it, because I'm just so happy when I watch it. But the picture that I've taken, the still that's from it, I was hunting it down, is there's this is completely relevant to our topic tonight as well. If you've looked at the picture, you may notice that they're in the Buildings and Loan, which Jimmy Stewart at the time was running. And in each of his hands, he's got a $1 bill. Maybe it's I think it's a $1 bill. $1 bill in his left hand and a $1 bill in his right hand. And the line is something along the lines, okay, we've got $2 left. Let's put them in the bank. And he instructs the notes to go into the bank and have lots of little baby dollars. He wants them to get procreating overnight, of course. Go off Mama and Papa dollar, go and have lots of little baby dollars. And of course, in a way, that's exactly what banks do. But if you've seen the whole sequence, it sums up some of the themes we've been touching upon here, because that day in the character's life, George, he's just got married. He's got married that day, and him and his wife are in the cab about to go to the airport. They've been saving up for ages. They've got something like $3,000. They're going to go all over Europe for 6 to 8 weeks. It's his entire life's aim. It's a very poignant story, because every time he tries to leave, he just gets thwarted for one responsibility or another. Anyway, as they're pulling out, it's raining, and the cab driver turns to him and says, "Don't look now, George, but I think there's a run on the bank." And there was a run on the building. The bank had closed its windows, so everybody was piling over to the savings and loan, which he ran, to get their money out. And it's a fantastic scene. It sums up pretty much what we're talking about here, because George, I've forgotten his surname. Can you remember his surname, Patrick? Anyway, whatever. George Bailey. There you go. George Bailey. George Bailey. The Bailey Buildings and Loan. And, or Bailey Savings and Loan, whatever it is. His wife, who's just married just momentarily before, she sees all these panicky people. And she holds up the $3,000. She said, "I've got some money to tide you over," because it's a Friday. And they're all desperate. They don't know what they're going to do over the weekend. And it's wonderful. It just sums up so much of what we're talking about. They basically, as the Baileys, they bail out these people. Really, they do. Sacrificing their honeymoon and everything and all that kind of stuff. I know it's kind of schmaltzy on one level. I think it's overly sentimental. But the essence of it is wonderful. And they're doing their best. And there's a lot of scenes in that film which address the core of this. There's a scene where he has to confront the bad guy, played by whose name I've forgotten right now, is wonderful in it. And talking about, he's a money-grabbing guy. He really is a usurer. He's actually acquired and bought up most of the town and wants to control it and can't have enough. And George Bailey's firm, set up by his dad, is there to actually help people by being kindly to them with finance in such a way that they can keep on operating and people can buy houses and get them out of slums and things like this. So the themes that are in this film, I think, are eternal. They're strong, they're good, and it's really what we need to see a return to. And I know I'm living in La La Land with it at the moment, but we need to be reminded of La La Land because it's generally a very attractive place. To me, it seems, anyway.
Yeah. Isn't there a dream sequence where he wakes up and the usurer took over all the banks and they're all, okay.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen it. They used to play that every Christmas.
Oh, I watch it. I watch it practically every Christmas, Patrick. How sad am I? And it's always fresh and new to me. Well, it's got the most fantastic sentiment in it, and you go, oh. But
it's like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's like the dream, like, oh, you can affect things and take over.
Yeah.
As a little guy, it's the dream to go and be represented in our Congress and make it fair for everybody. That's kind of at heart of all of those old Frank Capra movies back in the day.
Yeah, I think you can't watch this film often enough. Well, you probably can because you get bored with it if you know it backwards. But I'll watch it maybe every 3 or 4 years. And it always feels fresh. And of course, It's a Wonderful Life. The bit you're talking about, Patrick, is if you haven't watched it, this is a spoiler alert, right? So, but you should. I mean, it's been around since 1946. So where have you been, right? Unless, of course, you've just been born, or you're 18 and you've just got on the threshold and you don't know about it. But he has there's a terrible turn of events towards the end of the film. Again, involving money, right? A huge sum of money goes missing from the buildings and loan due to the poor attention of his Uncle Billy, who you can see in that picture. He's the guy on the left there, who's wonderful. And they're facing a hellish situation where if they don't find this money, because the bank examiner is coming, they're going to prison for a long time. And so George Bailey's life is on the point of disintegrating in the most astonishingly large way. And he's at his rope. He's at the end of his rope, completely. It's brilliantly done, I think. I mean, some people find Jimmy Stewart, I guess, overly sentimental, but I'm not one of them. I actually like him a lot. And he decides to take his own life. And at this point, his guardian angel, Clarence, who's absolutely marvelous in it, steps into his life and stops him from throwing himself into the river, as it were. And they're talking afterwards. And George Bailey says, oh, who the hell are you? And blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And he said, it'd been better if I'd never been born at all, George Bailey says. And Clarence looks up to it and he goes, hey, that's an idea. He said, okay, George, you got your wish. I said, what do you mean? He said, you have never been born. And they take him round that town, Bedford Falls, as he knew it. And it's now known as Pottersville because Potter is the evil guy in the whole thing. Brilliantly played. And it shows you the difference that his life made. The whole place is awful because of him not being alive. Because he was alive, he saved his brother's life and he did this and all this, that and the other. And he's just contributed and given and given and given because that's the way his life has gone. And it shows you this massive difference that he's made. And it's a difference at the level of the heart. And how he has become, he can't see what he's got. And the angel said, you had a wonderful life, George. But he can't see it because of his desperate situation. It's absolutely, I think it's just one of the best stories ever. I guess in terms of dynamic, the thing I could think about it in most recent terms that's close to it is Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, where he's stuck in this, he's stuck in that day and he gets ground down so that he transforms. That's what it's about. He's a miserable scrote of a human being to start off with. He's really rather repulsive and completely egotistical and into himself. And of course, as he gets broken down, all his concerns are about everybody else. And this, it's simple stuff. Yeah, well, we need simple stuff. Simple stuff's best.
Well, you know what? Hollywood is such that they keep making sequels to things. They can't come up with anything original. And,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
was talking to somebody the other day. It'd be a joke if they made a sequel to Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Night.
Oxymoron.
Yeah, well, they're just coming out with Gladiator 2 now, aren't they? You know.
Boy, yeah, I heard about that.
And Ridley Scott's made it. I mean, he just made Napoleon, who's 84 then. I don't know what they're doing. Why would you do such a thing? That film just stands alone. Just go, leave it be, will you? It's absolutely, that film just is a nailed-on film. It's so good. It's just an outstanding film. You just
brilliant.
Yeah, you're
Well,
just drawn
correct.
through it. Yeah, but so what? What a film! It's just fabulous. Yeah.
But have you noticed with the destruction of the family unit and everything, how scruffy people look now? When you look at a high street, you look at a picture of a high street, say 40 years ago, 50 years ago, the further you go back in time, the more smart people were. And now, when you look at people, the less smart they are. And I think this is self-respect. People have lost their self-respect because of the banking situation.
I agree with you.
Massive debt
Yes.
all the time.
Yep.
And I mean, when do you last see a man? And again, I'm not being snobby. Please don't get this the wrong way around. But wearing a suit. I mean, I've
got one on right now, Eric.
Well, I've got the tweeds on this evening, you know.
I should think so. I'm always properly dressed when I'm with people from Fockham Hall, you know. I don't turn up all shabby.
Well, that's right. You got to be, yes, and you got to have a monocle as well, you know.
I say, oh boy, I think you do. You should get, Eric, have you got one? You should get one. I worked with this guy called Stuart Willis Davis. I'm serious, a lovely guy. I can say his name because he's probably no longer
Stuart
alive.
Willis Davis, what a
He
name.
was absolutely marvellous guy. He really was. Top ho. He was one of those guys. I thought, I've actually bumped into one. He was marvellous. Incredibly gracious, kindly, laughed a lot. Great. He was on his uppers. He used to sell cranes on building sites and had lived the high life for many years. And it all gone pear-shaped, of course, as I kept on meeting people who were on the way down, who were latching onto my energy when I was like 29, 30, 31, that kind of age. I was just full of beans about everything. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, right? And but he was wonderful. And he would speak like that, and he had a monocle, and it was in most of the time. And he would say things like,
"You need a handlebar mustache to go with that."
He didn't have one. Actually, he had a sort of the beard thing. Yeah, there's only those mustaches, of course, are rare things. The really mighty mustaches, there's only certain men are fortunate enough to be able to grow those. I can grow one, but I can't get that mighty one with all curls up at the corners and everything. And you look like the Wizard of Oz or Zebedee or whatever it is. But he was wonderful. Yeah, you would have loved him, Eric. Right up our street. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I love all those guys. They're really, really good guys. But you're right about the standards. This is why the usury thing, it creeps into everything. Everybody goes, oh, it's not so bad. I'm going, do you know, just imagine what it would be like without this burden on you. Look at the complexities of bank accounts. Oh, they're just a joke. I'm not interested in all their crap. And of course, these are guys who are struggling, having made money up out of thin air and charged interest on it for hundreds of years. They're useless. They're absolutely useless. Someone's written here, by the way, Alvin Core in the chat says, can we put together a presentation which communicates the necessary message to the masses, an achievable alternative to the mass corruption and moral deprivation? I think we can. I'm trying to do it in these conversations. It's a bit lame, I grant you that. Maybe it's got to be formal, but we need short, simple pitches. I've mentioned here before, my pitch is, with regards to here, and this goes if you're living in America, and I'll address it. If you're an American and you live in America and you contribute to the welfare and the economic upkeep of the nation, which we assume you all do, why don't you own the bank? Why don't the people just own their own bank? It's literally nuts that all it is a ticketing system, right? It's pen and ink. And people that are involved with producing pen and ink documents are controlling your entire lives, having not produced anything. They don't produce stuff. They control what everybody else produces because apparently they're trusted and they can make sharp investments. We don't want sharp investments. We don't need them. We don't need people You see, once you actually take usury out of the whole thing, this urge to keep making money will take a major blow. because the purpose of life is not to make money. It's become that because of the interest on debts that compels you to be unable to work Monday and Tuesday. Now you're going to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Oh, and your wife's got to work as well now. In fact, you both got to work, and you've got to pay more taxes, and you can't raise children. The houses are £700,000 each for a 3-bed semi, and you're going, now who caused all that? What causes that? Usury causes that. That's what it is, and usury destroys nations. That's what usury, and it's destroyed every nation and every empire that it's been in. Every single one. It's destroying this one right now.
Usury was abolished in Germany in 1933, and almost overnight went from totally broke country to an economic boom.
Mm-hmm.
Full stop. That's
Yeah.
what happened. And wherever usury has been abolished, the country booms.
It's just released. It's released. It is. Most people don't even know the chains that are holding them down, because you were born into it like a fish is born into water. You saw your parents struggling with meeting the bills. You saw them acquiring credit cards or whatever you saw. There've been all these different financial toys that have come along. Right? Remember when no one had a credit card? I remember when very few people even had checkbooks. They lived by cash. That was in the 60s. People didn't have a checkbook. Well, that was for fancy people. I get paid in my pay packet cash at the end of the week, and I give that most of the money to my wife, and she makes sure that we eat for the next week, and it works. And of course, the best economists in any land are the wives, the rulers of the household. The best by miles. They know what they've got to spend. Yeah. And they apportion it correctly. They don't spend beyond their means, and they teach thrift and prudence. And when a good thing comes along, boy, do you really know it's a good thing. You've been waiting a little while. Now we're in this excessive, rampant, plastic sort of commercial space. I got to have this. I got to have that. I got to have it yesterday. I need it with credit. I need it with this. What? You don't need, and it's not making anybody happier, is it? I don't see happier people. I don't see people that are buoyant, full of energy and life and vim and vigor. I see people going, oh my God, I got to work to pay all my bills off. I need a new toy. I need a new car. Why? Because that's the culture that's been perverted, that's been brought to us.
What I saying about looking smart is you don't need a lot of money to look smart, because if you go to a charity shop, habitually, you got to go to a charity shop in a posh area. Don't go to one in a poor area. You'd be amazed at what you can find with, woolen suits, which you can't buy off the peg now. Dirt cheap. And tweeds.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's quite surprising what's in charity shops. But you got to know what you're looking for. That's the thing. There's a lot of rubbish in there. But when you think about it, even when denims became popular, when was that? 60s or 50s, I should think, with Elvis Presley and that, people still looked smart with their denims. They don't any longer. I mean, you look at most of the professions. Look at nurses. They look as if they're in pajamas. Horrible outfits. Mm-hmm. Not feminine at all. And we're becoming like Mao's China, where everybody had to wear denim. And if previous generations woke up, say the Second World War generation woke up, they'd say everybody looks like slaves. Because they do. They look just like slaves in Fritz Lang's, what was his name there? Metropolis. You look at that film, Metropolis, that's what people look like. All walking along, miserable. It's surprising. It really is. But that's my little rant for this evening.
It's a good rant. It's spot on, Eric. It's absolutely spot on. I mean, if we look at the States, because they've had a more vigorous anti-usury political scene, certainly in the early part of the 20th century, they did. Because they only got the Fed in 1913. It's not long ago. It's just over 100 years ago, 111 years ago. It's not long. And I've mentioned here before, prior to that, the whole of that angling to create it up was because it was obvious to many people that a central bank was absolutely not needed, because there was so much natural prosperity taking place. The people didn't need to go and borrow from a bank. They'd made so much profits and done so well by everybody working so industriously to produce things that everybody else wanted. They could fund a business's growth from their savings. Well, that's not good to a bank. Yeah,
from their surplus stock of what they've been building.
That's right.
It's-
Honourable,
we have
honourable
now-
monetary behaviour. That's how it should be. Surely that's how it should be.
Nowadays, it's all on-demand manufacturing. Like, it's just-in-time type thing, and that's kind of what Charles Lindbergh was talking about in his little pamphlet he did on the money trust. That's what they had us set up for, was just on-demand manufacturing. There's no need for a surplus. Well, it's fine and great if you're a banker, but if you're someone who's a tradesman, you have nothing to bargain with, because it's all being taken from you and then given to somebody else who's the middleman that gets his cut, and you have nothing to trade. So
Apparently,
that's part of the solution then, is to put that back into the hands of the laborers.
When apparently years ago, trains always had a standby crew in case someone went sick, and they always had a standby train as well, because they knew that the nation relied upon transport, which is a very, very important part of the infrastructure.
Yep.
Now, I mean, where I live, well, I think there's only 3 buses a day, if that. So if you miss one, I hate public transport. It's just awful. It's extremely expensive for what? It's rubbish. And now they're trying to stop you driving a car. Now, I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but I'm finding wherever you're going, they're putting traffic cones out.
Yep.
Closing off lanes for
Absolutely.
no apparent reason.
Yep.
And I was in a traffic jam yesterday for about 3/4 of an hour. Why? Because they got temporary traffic lights that were only allowing 3 cars through at a time.
I think what they're doing is
standing around going, look at this.
Yeah. I think they're softening us up, Eric, for 15-minute cities or 5-second cities or whatever it is.
I agree with you.
That's what they're doing.
I agree with you, because the thing is, I go and see Miles, and he's a health practitioner. You know, he's a natural health chap. Now, it's 4.5 miles away from about 5 miles, if that. I could have actually done it quicker by push bike than by car. It's ridiculous. It really is. And now, around the corner to where I live, they've cordoned off part of the road for no apparent reason. They've got traffic lights there, and it's causing a up with cars. Why? There's no roadworks, nothing going on, just cones. I wonder if anybody else has noticed this where they live, where they're coning off part of the road for no apparent reason. It's bonkers. It really is.
Lots of it.
There again, it's probably usury, and it's a form of corruption, because you have these politicians that are getting money for these public works projects that are just being pocketed somewhere and money laundered, and then they have to prove that they're doing some sort of work to earn their pay. So they put out these traffic cones and make it look like there's construction going on.
Yeah.
It just goes on forever. I don't know.
Also, the local town is forever. That's what I was going to say. Is the local town is forever having new paving slabs to put in for summer, always around about April time, so they can use up their budget. It's systemic stupidity. It's systemized, and people are unconscious about how stupid they are, because they're conforming to things like budgetary constraints. You know that little phrase they throw out, economic efficiency? They're always talking about that. If we stand back and look at what's happened technologically in our lifetimes, dear chaps, when I was born, there weren't any personal computers, and computer networks weren't even known. I mean, they probably were in, advanced academic research institutes and DARPA and places like that. But in Yorkshire in the 1960s and 70s, we didn't know what the bloody hell you were talking about until Clive Sinclair created the ZX Spectrum or whatever it was in the early 70s, and all this kind of stuff took off, right? Now, this was always said, this is going to improve economic efficiency. Has it? It hasn't. People are working longer hours now than they've ever done, right? Because the whole focus of the system is to keep the usurers happy. It's not about actually producing decent life or decent living conditions. It's a manifest crime
that we're surrounded by so much stuff, so much productivity, and people are compelled to go through the most arduous paths to get hold of it. Yeah, I accept there'll be some people who just like gluttons for stuff. I need all this stuff, I've got to get it. But most people wouldn't. I mean, why would you want loads of stuff? You have to clean it, if you keep on buying gear, don't you? You don't want... Why do people want bucket loads of clothes? What are they? Insecure or something? Blokes don't need all that kind of stuff as you go. You just go, look, will you leave me alone? I want my time. I just need things. I want decent food. The food's shot to bits because of economic considerations. Isn't it? So every single thing that harms us is an indirect symptom of the fact that the banking system is designed as our enemy because it's mammon and it does not conform to the laws of God. It's cruel. Like that guy was saying, Henry Smith was like, it's a cruelty. It's perpetrated by people who are waging a war of cruelty on others. You owe me more than I lent you. You didn't even lend me anything, mate. You just made it up on a sheet of paper. But you've got some legal statute that says you're empowered to do that. And if I don't pay you, some Bobby's going to come round and lock me up. Because that's what really is the threat at the end of income tax, isn't it? Physical harm. We're going to put you away in a box if you don't pay. Why should I pay you? I don't understand what it's for. It's to pay this guy on the council. What, the guy that doesn't do anything or that does a job that doesn't even need doing? I mean, take insurance industry. A computer could do the whole thing, couldn't it? Or am I just being super dim? Oh, well, you take all the competition out of the insurance industry. We're not interested in competition in certain areas. You are in others. But it's a zero-sum game. Stop burning your houses down then we don't have to pay to repair them. Be responsible. Stop taking a bet. I mean, Buckminster Fuller said, insurance on a house, you're betting that your house is going to burn down and the insurance company is betting that it won't. That's the essence of it. I think my house is going to burn down. I better insure it. Why? Why is it going to burn down? You're a maniac. Actually, if you're me, you are, because I set fire to a pound
it's
this
like
week.
Insurance. It's like life insurance, Paul. Yeah, it's like you're betting that you're going to die. Well, so what? I'm not going to be around to collect on it.
And people talk earnestly about this.
Rip-off.
Yeah, it's a bizarre attitude to life. Of course, you're going to die.
Insurance is a con.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, why bother with it?
It's usury
look
by
at car
name.
insurance.
Yeah,
but look at car insurance. Now in New Zealand, they seem to have a pretty good system. I'm not sure. I think they do it in Australia. Could be wrong. Whereas you jump into any car and you're automatically insured, but third party only. So you haven't got this. So a 17-year-old can drive a car and can afford it, but he's only third party. If he's got a flash car, then he'll be fully comp or third party fire and theft or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the moment, people are being priced off the road because they can't afford the insurance.
We'll have that. We'll have that policy, Eric. Put that one down in your notebook. We'll have that one.
Stop paying it. Stop paying it.
That's right. We do the same as what we do in New Zealand. Yeah. But then,
well, I mean,
the government mafia come along.
If it is theft, people should stop paying it and then fight the consequences of it. Now,
I agree.
It's easy for me to say that, but it's going to come down to that kind of level.
I think it's going to have to come to that because, quite honestly, when you look at it, what is the difference between the mafia and government? And we should call it mafia government because the only difference I see is if you don't pay the mafia, they hurt you physically. If you don't pay the government, they hurt you psychologically. That's the only difference. They'll still hurt you. So, and you're paying a lot of money for what? Sod all. I mean, somebody said the other day, we need to pay council tax because, well, hang on a moment, council tax. I live in an area where there's 55 houses. I worked out that if we paid a gardener, a road sweeper, and a policeman or a security person to walk around so everything's okay, we get a fantastic service for a quarter of the price we pay in council tax. And also, in education. So people, we would pay less to get more and would also create employment because we don't see road sweepers, never see a policeman, and all schools are indoctrination centres. So parents would then become more
false indoctrination centers
responsible because they'd have to find a way of educating their children.
Well, that's the thing. They should be indoctrinating them with the proper doctrine. do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the type of doctrine that they should be learning, and
Right.
it's proper indoctrination instead of this false stuff where it's buggery again. You know.
Why are we paying so much money in council tax? Because did you know it all goes to the government, and the government then give back to the local council what they think is the right amount. So it's another tax. So it's not council tax at all. It's not a tax. I call it a protection racket. That's all it is, because it's the same as the protection racket. You're paying money on your house for what? You know, it's the most expensive litter around here, because all I pay for is to have my rubbish taken away. That's it. I mean, the roads have got so many potholes, it's like a blooming battlefield. But that comes under a different type of tax. The council's not responsible for the roads, only the pavements. So it just becomes totally complicated. It's just bonkers. It really is.
It is.
So I actually think it's time people start to say, no, I'm not paying it. We're gonna do it ourselves. And again, if the 55 houses all got together and said, right, stuff your council tax with, the sun doesn't shine, we're going to get gardeners round, we're going to pay for this, do this. I bet you it'll be a fantastic system, and we pay a fraction of what we're paying now. That's my other little rant over with.
Well, it is about it's about many things, I think. This is a problem. I mean, systemically, it does operate, obviously, on a national scale. So there has to be some kind of a communication approach to deal with it at the national level. It's difficult because, as we've said over here, there's only a few MPs that I'm aware of over the last 20 or 30 years that know what's going on with this. The ones that have actually communicated about it. Maybe many of them do know, but it's just not the political stick they want to wield because they just think it's just too hard basket.
They got to put their head above the trench to do it, to see what's going on.
Yeah, they're not really going to champion the people in the way that we want. You want to fix the economy? Yeah, get rid of the private bank. Well, no, we've got to raise taxes. No, we don't need to do any of that yet. You might need to do that later on. You don't even know what you need to do. Right now, you're playing on a sticky wicket. It's like not knowing what an inch is on a ruler, or it changes length every day. You actually don't know. Now, they love all this. They actually love the not knowingness because it justifies this industry of experts to turn up and tell you what to do. But I would suggest that most of what they're expert in is a bogus field of knowledge. Because right now, scientists won't deal with this stuff like this. Engineers won't. They just laugh you out. Are you an idiot? Right? If I need a thing 3 feet long, it's got to be 3 feet long. It can't be 2'9" and you tell me it's going to be 3 feet next week. That's what banking's like. It's ridiculous. And this is why the civilization falls down, because the sort of agreement structures between people contractually with money behind them are all over the shop. You now have industries, contract management teams. What are you talking about? Just agree to do a thing and do it. I know. I'm sort of like, what are you, Paul? It's much more complicated than that. It's become much more complicated than that because industries have grown up around it to fulfill a need that doesn't need to be fulfilled. We've no shortage of money. This is a lie. There's never any shortage of money when there's a war, is there? Ever.
Oh, spot on, yeah.
So for war, there's plenty of money. For peace, there's hardly any.
Paul,
that's it.
I sent you a song idea in Telegram.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, I might go and look at it in a minute. But I think, of course, as you know, that the possibilities for the advantages, I don't know what they all are, but it won't be bad. It won't be as bad as this. And the idea of relieving people from that psychological pressure of paying the bills is such a biggie. It's like a hidden force making everybody... Someone wrote earlier in the chat that people are exhausted. I think it was EXO. Absolutely right. People look exhausted. They're drained. They're confused. They're bewildered. No wonder they reach for a beer every now and again. I understand all this, but explaining it and understanding it doesn't fix it. There is a fixable solution. We have to muster up. But can you hold a crowd together for 20 years or however long it would take to get the communications campaign? Because the other side are literally going to blow you out. They're mad for it.
Well, that's
they're mad
where
for
the
their power, you
institution
see.
Comes in, Paul.
Yeah.
That's why that's why I'm a Catholic, because you have the institution already there. It's not gone away, but it's been weakened, and you don't have the press behind you. You got all the press against you, because you're the only force capable of speaking to crowds to get them to see reason and not go to war when they want to drum up a war and kill boys off, young men that are the prime of their life. And that's why they do everything they can to discredit it. They do everything, they're pedophiles, right? This thing with Justin Welby and all that kind of stuff. It's all calculated to get you demoralized to the point where you're just like, give up, and then let's go to war. And you get the warmongers in, and they're rearing to go, chomping at the bit.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you take the Church of England, and someone needs to, I suppose, it's good. They've got something like
someone needs to.
Yeah, really, there needs to be a reverse buyout by the congregation of the Church of England. I'm just using silly jargon, right, to sort of get the idea across. There are 16,000 plus churches. I don't know how many, cathedrals and all that other stuff is, but there's a lot. It's worth quite a lot. They also own vast quantities of land. They've got stock holding in everything. Why couldn't the Church of England provide the Bank of England through the church?
That's right.
I mean, why couldn't it? I mean, hey, church guys, if you're honourable to the laws of God, what are you doing arsing around with usurers? Hello? Why do you do that? Why are you in breach of the laws of God? And I'm supposed to turn up and listen to you? You're having a joke.
Well, Dante put usurers in the same circle of hell. I think it's the seventh circle with the sodomites. So figure that one out. I mean, they go hand in hand for some reason.
Well, they do. And of course, the church is unfortunately riddled with all that sort of nonsense. It's not as if I'm looking to the church to save me.
Well,
heaven forbid. But we can see how far it's decayed.
That's good. But it's an institution that is good at its heart, at its core. And we just have to be able to wrestle it away from these maniacs that want to drive us off the cliff. There again, there's that analogy, because that's who we have at the wheel. It's like you can't necessarily blame them, the tired people that just have been beaten into submission. You have to be able to go in there and say, hey, I'm willing to put my service to this and do something about it, because as far as I know, that's the only institution that's gonna do anything. And the Church of England is, that's. Since Henry VIII, it's kind of been a lost cause, but it's
ripe for a reverse buyout.
And that's just it. You have to be able to get in there, and it's tough. This is going to be a tough swing.
Well, congregations take over the church. It's all fun again, say local parishioners.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact, and I don't know if it's the same today, but my father used to say that the Church of England in the 40s, 50s and 60s was not only the biggest property owner, but they were the worst landlords. And if anybody didn't pay their rent, they'd be out. And he said they were the most ruthless. Now, I don't know how true that is today, but I remember him saying that. I don't know, I've just taken his word for it. I don't know where he got that information from.
Yeah.
But when you look at the amount of wealth they've got, it's phenomenal. How comes? Where do they get it from? And
why is it not with the parishioners?
Well,
I mean, it's really simple. It's really got to be simple. I know I'm talking like. Do you remember when Life of Brian came out with Monty Python in the 70s? I don't know if you do. And I think Russell Harty had
with Malcolm Muggeridge.
Yeah, he had Malcolm Muggeridge on, and the vicar or the Bishop of Southwark. Do you remember him? The Bishop of Southwark.
I remember that, yes.
Was absolutely repellent. He was absolutely just, everything about him was just repulsive. He didn't look like a man of God. He just looked like a man who'd just eaten an awful lot of pies. And he had that big purple thing on and a massive sort of silver crucifix, which he was toying with all the time. Like, look at my crucifix. And it's like, it was pathetic. It was absolutely pathetic. And I just thought, how much money have you got? And then you find out about all these palaces that they're in, and you look at the history of it and you're going, oh, oh, you're just the same guys. You're just quite prepared to even lie about this. I mean, that's been my view of hierarchies in religions since I was a kid. I just don't get it. What do you even need these? Oh, we've read more than you. Forget that. Teach me how to read it. I'm not bothered that you've read it. Well, what use is that to me?
You gotta look at the Church of England too, as kind of abandoning principles of obedience, poverty, and chastity. Because as far as I know, you have married priests, you have homosexuals in the priesthood now, and in the bishops. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane. Whereas at least Catholics, they don't have that. And in principle, you have people that get voices like. An example would be this James Martin, who's one of the big main pushers in the Jesuits, who's a flaming homosexual. As far as I know, he still is. But that's the outlier. It's not the rule, and you don't have that. You don't have women priests. You don't have this idea that there's outside. There's an order to things that has been established that has just been corrupted. And if you could get back to that, I think you have a chance. But until you do, you're not going to be able to do anything. And unfortunately, there in England, I mean, it's not looking good for you. I mean, but it hasn't been for a while.
Institution at all. It's got no weight in the local. It did have when I was at least. It seemed to be structured right, but no doubt it was riddled with these perverts as well back then. Process that, where would the devil hide out? Well, in the last place and it's true. There are people with the most foul sorts of behavior. We think we will get a woman heading up the Church of England. Actually, when I say we,
I think there is one on the short list now, and I think she was an immigrant. That came over here
because that's isn't that what Christ taught? But put immigrants in charge of my church that are not of my flock. That it's just imbecilic, but it's actually it's evil, really. I mean, it's just it's evil.
Well, I've actually found, and I'm probably I don't want to upset anybody, but I'm sure there's some very nice people that are born again. But a lot of these so-called born again Christians are the most vile people you could ever wish to meet, because they're trying to convince you all the time. A lot of them, I'm not saying all of them, but the ones I've come up against are convincing you that they're trying to convince you that they're a nice person. Oh, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that. Well, if they're that good and that holy, they wouldn't need to convince anybody. People would see it for themselves. I've found that most of them are either alcoholics or there's something gone wrong with them somewhere. But again, not all. I'm sure there are some very good born-again Christians and that. But what always makes me wonder is that you look at during times of war, you've got a priest on one arm within one army, and you have priests in the other army. And I mean, surely, couldn't the priests walk in that no man's land and sort of shake hands with each other if they've got a belief that strong? That they would do that. But I can't understand that a priest in an army. Can anybody else explain that? It doesn't make sense to me.
The last two. X has written here. The last two heads of the C of E have been bizarre. Yes, they have. I mean, Welby was an ex-financial guy from the city. It's just sort of really, really silly. Well, he was, wasn't he? So there you go. He's like a usurer right in the whole thing. Hello, Justin. Haven't you No, you haven't worked it out yet. Obviously not. So because that's really, it's the ultimate. It's one of the ultimate crimes against the law is to start lending at interest. It's just completely because it destroys the nation. It destroys the congregation of the nation. It's just, and that's what it's done. There's no church left now. They've chewed all that up. And the other comment, I think maybe Exo made it or someone else, is that, it was Herodotus. Hi, Herodotus. Churches seem never open. This is true. They're not. They used to be able to just wander in and just sit down. I remember doing it as a teenager, really. Not that I was feeling all religious. I just liked to go and sit in a church. It was quiet sometimes and just gather your thoughts for 10 minutes and just be at peace. And you go, I quite like this. This is nice.
But
all right, I'm refreshed.
You have to lock your doors these days because you don't know who's going to show up and start looting your goods. It's like you were saying. We were talking about that before. It used to be that the churches were open and you could go there as a place of refuge.
Yep.
And you could trust people.
A prisoner, apparently, if they're on the run, or a convict, could run into a church, and the police were not allowed to chase them in. That was law in this.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I don't know what it is today.
Right.
They never left. They all turned into priests, and they're in there to this day. To this day.
No, that was back when they had
Justin
chivalry.
Welby was one of them. He just legged it in there. He go, I think I'll be head of the Church of England now. That'll sort it out. Yeah, wow.
Oh
gosh.
There was a chap. What was his name? Now he used to play the guitar, and he did this song about you're a very funny nun, Sister Veronica or something, and it was about a convict that was on the run, and he made out he was a nun. And what was his name?
None
Jake
on the
Thackeray.
run, eh?
Yeah. Look up Jake Thackeray. He died a long time ago. You'll probably find it, Patrick. Very English. He came from up north somewhere, near where Paul's from. Sort of. I think Yorkshire. He was
God's own
Yorkshire.
county, you mean?
But do you remember Jake Thackeray, Paul?
I do remember. Oh, Jake
Yeah,
Thackeray.
do you remember him?
Yeah, he came from Bradford. Yes, and he sang all these songs with incredibly odd, rather surreal lyrics and things. And he sang like that.
That's
didn't
it.
He? Yeah. He did.
He was a bit weird. Let's put it that way.
Yes, he was.
Paul,
Yeah.
are we going for a third hour?
I wasn't planning to go for a third hour tonight. I was planning to actually cut it short. I've got a huge, big sort of pain in my jaw at the moment. Are you all right with ending bang on the hour at the top of the hour?
That's all right.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
all right.
We're going to do
Yeah.
2 hours this week. I'm sorry if you're all hanging on for 3 hours. I'm a bit run down. I had sniffles last week. I've got to get some garlic in my mouth. I've got this huge, big sort of swelling on one of my teeth, and it's playing up a bit. Anyway, look, I found some Jake Thackeray to play us out with. How about that? Any particular song? This will drive everybody
That's
crazy.
brilliant.
Brother Gorilla. How about Brother Gorilla? I've no idea what that is. That's one of his songs, Brother Gorilla.
I've no idea what it is.
No, this is all a journey into the unknown with us. So we're going to wrap up at 2 hours here this week.
I foggiest idea what Brother Gorilla is.
Yep. No, well, I'm going to play it in a minute. It's 3 minutes long, so we better start playing it. Here we go. So I'll just say adios. Fantastic show tonight. We're going to carry this theme on probably next week because there's a lot more to touch upon. And if I had the if I had the brain power, we'd go a little bit longer tonight. But I'm a bit under it at the moment, so forgive me for that. I think we've done pretty well over 2 hours. Yeah, no, it's good. And 2 hours is short, is sharp and sweet. And it's really, really good. So shout out to everybody in the chat. Been very lively tonight. And we'll be back again next week. There's a lot more to talk about on this theme. There's a lot of news items I had lined up for tonight, but it's like a 5 hour show. I've got tons of things. They'll probably half of them will still be relevant next week. So we'll go through then. And we'll play you out with Brother Gorilla by Jake Thackeray. How about that? Brace yourselves. I have no idea what we're letting ourselves in for.
Good night. Nor have I.
Good night, everyone.
Yep. Nice.
Through the bars of a large enclosure, the village ladies intently stared, where a gorilla with massive composure was impassively combing his hair. They were shamelessly interested, eyeing devoutly a certain spot, but me mother's especially requested I refrain from telling you what. Brother Gorilla. The door of the circus lockup, where the noble brute had been put by an administrational cock-up, was unwisely left unshut. I'm going to lose it at last, he cried, swinging lissomely out of his cage, referring of course to his chastity. He was just at the difficult age. Brother Gorilla. Those self-same ladies who previously had been licking their lips from afar did a bunk which shows how devious and whimsical women are. In the path of the lovesick monkey there were two who wouldn't budge, a little old lady all shrunken and a Petty Sessions judge. Brother Gorilla. The old girl said it would be surprising and unlikely in the extreme if anyone found me appetizing and beyond my wildest dreams. The judge intoned with tranquility to take me for a female ape would be the height of improbability. Even judges make mistakes. Brother Gorilla. It would be curious and uncanny, say if the choice were up to you, to ravish a judge or a granny, and you didn't know which to do. If I were in such a position and the choice had got to be mine, I'd beg the old lady's permission but go for grandma every time. Brother Gorilla. Though the gorilla is very proficient in the role of a paramour, his mental equipment's deficient and his eyesight's awfully poor. With a Paleolithic leer, he gave the old lady the miss, and grabbing the judge by the ear, gave him an introductory kiss. Brother Gorilla. In time the gorilla's desires were more or less gratified. The judge, being rather biased, couldn't see the funny side. He was kicking and screaming and wailing when his moment of truth had come, like those wretches he orders daily to be taken away and hung. Brother Gorilla.
Well, what can you say about that? What can you say about that? Thanks, everyone, for being with us for the slightly shorter show this week, but we've done our 2 hours on WBN. We're wrapped up here. I've been joined by Patrick and Eric for a lively 2-hour discussion on usury, and we will usually come back to this ha-ha-ha topic quite regularly because we need to, because there's lots of things to talk about with it. And it's directly attributable for most of the woes that we're currently enduring. We'll be back again at the same time next week, 8 p.m. in the UK, 3 p.m. US Eastern. Hopefully you'll be able to join us then. Have a cracking week. I promise not to break any more cars. I can't. I haven't got any left. And I'll see you next Thursday. Ciao for now. Bye, everyone.